So in learning exercise 5, we're going to look at defining our own methods and calling those methods. We're going to do this using a program that displays the lyrics of a well-known song, I hope. It's called the Hokey Pokey. Today I mainly see it sung or performed at funny weddings. If you're not familiar with the song, there's a couple links to videos that you can watch to refamiliarize yourself or learn the hokey pokey. And feel free to get up and perform it once or twice to make sure you understand it correctly. Sorry, the song, at least the song has certain repetitions that make it fit well for this exercise, even though it's not the best song in the world. So our first task is to download the learning exercise, the project in BlueJ and unpack it. So at the bottom, you should see it project here. Download the project, unzip it, open it up, and you should see it in BlueJ. You should see a singer object and a hokey pokey one method object. We're going to build a different hokey pokey method object with multiple methods. So this one's called one method. Okay. Um, So yeah, you should initially see that, and we can try this out. We're going to just create a new hokey pokey object, one method object. So we're going to just go here, create a new object, give it some name. I'll just leave the default name. And then there's just a single method called full song that displays the lyrics of the full song here on the terminal. And so again, the song is pretty straightforward. It has a set of verses. It starts off, you put your, in this case, right foot in, you put your right foot out, you put your right foot in, and you shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about. So this section is what's called the refrain. It's repeated each time exactly as it is. And then during each verse, we put a different body part. So here we're putting our right foot in and out. Here we're putting left foot in and out. Here we're putting right hand. Later on, I think we're putting your whole self in and out. So there's different verses. So it's nice and repetitious. We have this refrain in every verse, after every verse, and we have each verse here. So that's all done with this hokey pokey one method. So create a new hokey pokey, name it what you want, call the full song method and see how it works. It displays it in the window. Again, we analyzed it for the repeated parts, so make sure you're familiar with the repeated parts because that's going to be important as we work on the next thing. So now we're going to create a new class just called Hokey Pokey. And we're going to delete everything in it and copy the full song method from the other class over to this class. So let's jump back to BlueJ here. I'm going to make a new class, and this is going to just be called Hokey Pokey. I'm going to bring it down here. I'm going to open it up, and public class Hokey Pokey find, but inside that class here, this little template that has a variable and a constructor and another sample method. I'm just going to delete everything, so I just have a blank class there. And then I'm going to go over to the hokey pokey one method, grab this full song method, and paste it over here. So this is a method that's in this class called full song, and it displays the whole song in one method that I can call. Okay, but now we're going to break it into parts. So again, we want to compile it, make sure we've got that copy and paste all good over there. Now we're going to try to create a new method called refrain and move some of the information to that. Okay, so let's go back here. Okay, I'm going to close hokey pokey one method. Here's my new hokey pokey class with the one method in it. So I'm going to compile this, make sure I get don't get any errors. Sometimes, when you're cutting and pasting, you might goof up the bracketing here, the curly brackets or something like that. So I have one method and it all compiles fine. But now I look through this and I see this repeated code. I see a printout of a verse, and then a printout of a refrain, and a printout of a different verse, and then the same refrain code. So this code and this code is exactly the same, and it's repeated again and again. Here's the refrain again. So what I'm going to do is take that repeated code out and put it in its own method, and then just call that method in here. So I could put that method before or after this method. I'm going to put it up here, and I'm just going to say it's going to be a public method. So generally our methods will be public. Uh, it's going to be void. It's not going to return anything, any data. And in next unit, we'll learn how to return data. So we won't have necessarily void methods in the next unit, but for now it'll be void. And I'm just going to have it called refrain. And then it has parentheses. There's nothing in the parentheses yet. Next unit, again, we'll learn how to put parameters in here so we can pass information in and out of a method. But for now, it's just going to be parenthesis, parenthesis, and then a curly bracket and a curly bracket here. So that'll be our method that we're going to declare. And now I'm going to take this refrain code, copy it out from there, and put it in here. Now my spacing's off, so I'm just going to go up and do auto layout to relay out everything correctly. So it's just put the right tabs and spaces in here. So I've moved this code from the refrain into this method and called it refrain. So this is how we define a method. Public void, the name of the method, parentheses right now, and then a start of a curly bracket and an end of curly bracket. So this is a set of code. Now we can call this code from this method or from another, from within this class or from another class in different ways. So I'm going to call it in this. Here's my full song method where I have refrain here. I'm going to replace that. I'm going to delete that code and just put in a call. To call a method, I just put in the method name and parentheses, and if there are parameters, they would go in here, but there aren't. So I just call that method by name. And so what the computer will be doing, it'll be going line by line through this code, executing each one of these. It'll get to here, and it'll jump up to the refrain method, and then go through those methods until it's done, and it'll return back. Now, generally, when we're writing methods, we put in a return statement at the end to tell it to return back. If you don't, it'll automatically return back when it hits the end of the method. So that return is somewhat optional. Later on, next unit, when we're returning a value, we will have to put a return in there to return the data we might need. Okay, so we have our return. So again, it'll go through here. When it gets refrain, it'll jump up here, go through this code. When it finds the return or gets to the end of the method, it will return back here and continue on with this code. So I'm calling the refrain here. Now I can do that again and again. Here's the refrain. I can replace these 4 lines of code with this 1 line of code to call the refrain. And here's the refrain again. So go through here and replace each call of each refrain code with this call to refrain. So now our code is going to get much smaller because we've replaced it, all this repetitive code with single calls. So this makes our code hopefully easier to read. We can go through and read our code. We're printing out a verse, we do a refrain, print out a verse. And it also makes it easier to edit. If we want to change the refrain, we don't have to change it everywhere. We just have to change the refrain up here once. So it's nice to have this duplicated code only in one spot. So now I can just refer to this refrain method. Okay, let's see how we're doing. So we've created this refrain method and set it up. Now, we'll learn more later on comments on methods and putting comments on methods. But for now, I'm just going to leave the methods there without a comment until later on. Um, okay, and then we've done this task 4, excuse me, task 4 where we've called the refrain, I mean task 5 where we called the refrain method. And now we're going to compile the code and make sure it works. Okay, I'm going to compile this code. It works. And now I'm going to, so here's my new object, Hokey Pokey object. I'm going to just create a new version of this down here. Now I should be able to still say full song. I'm going to clear out my terminal window. And then I'm going to call the full song, and it should now display my full song just as it is. So none of my code, I mean, the functionality is the same, it's just the internal structure is differently. Now, whenever it displays this refrain, it does it in that method. Now, I can also just call the refrain directly here. Now, it's its own method. I could just say, give me the refrain, and it would just give me the refrain directly. Okay, now let's go back into our Hokey Pokey code. One of the things we want to do now is add some more methods for each verse. Okay, so I have the Hokey Pokey method open again. Now I have these verses. Here's the first verse and the second verse. So one thing we often do again is take repeated code and break it up into methods, but we also will take code based on kind of functionality. All these lines are related to the first verse. And my code is getting kind of long. You can see over here in my highlight window that it's more than one screen here. And in longer programs, we could fill this whole thing up. We could have 10, 20 pages of one method. And that gets really hard to find our way around. So when our methods get kind of long like this, we want to break them up into functional units to make them more understandable. So even though this is not going to make it any shorter because this verse occurs only once, it'll help with the functionality and the understandability. Understandability, is that a word? Okay, so I'm going to say public void. All our methods right now are public void, and I'm just going to call it verse 1 for the first verse. And parentheses, no parameters yet because we don't know how to do that, and a curly bracket and another curly bracket. And again, just like before, I'm going to take this code here for the first verse. I'm going to copy it out of here and paste it up here. So verse 1 now, I can replace where I had the verse 1 here before. I can just call that method to do that code. Verse 1 method. And then semicolon. So here's my verse 1. And here's where I call, this is where I define the verse and say what that method should do, the actions it would do. And then here's where I call that verse. It tells the computer to go up here and do that code. So I have a verse and I have a refrain. And similarly, I'm going to do that with the rest of this stuff. I'm going to declare another public void verse 2. I'm going to find verse 2 here. Here's the second verse about the left foot. Copy that code, put it up here, and stick down here a call to verse 2. So now I have verse 1, verse 2, and go through that and do that for the rest of the verses. So now I've declared verse 3, 4, and 5 here, and I'm calling them down here in the main program. I can compile this, make sure it compiles, and I can test this out. It's good again to compile and test frequently as we're working through this code. So I'm going to create a new Hokey Pokey object. I'm going to say do the full song, and it should display the full song. I'm going to check it out. I do the right hand in. Oops, right foot in, left foot in, right hand in, right hand in. So here I'm seeing a mistake. I do the right hand in twice. and then I do the whole self. So something's wrong here. So I should track this down. So again, what I can do is say, where's this verse? It's in this verse here. Something's wrong with this verse or how I'm using it. So I can check out my verses. Here's verse 3, put your right hand in. Here's verse 4, put your left hand in. So that looks right. But why am I getting right hand twice? So I can go down here and check. So I'm calling verse 1, verse 2, verse 3, verse 3. So here's my error. I'm calling verse 3 twice in a row. So it's doing the same thing. So it goes up and does verse 3, does right hand in, out, that sort of stuff, and comes back here, does the refrain, and then goes up and does reverse verse 3 again. So again, it's good to compile and check your errors, try to fix them as you go. So if I do that, create a new hokey pokey object, do the full song, I should see it working correctly. Um, I forgot to clear it from last time, but here's right foot in, left foot in, right hand, left hand, that looks better, and whole self. So I'm getting my correct verse here. Now, another interesting thing we can do now that we've got this broken up into parts is I have this full song here, but I can actually sing the verses in any order. I'm going to close this off and clear my terminal window. I can do a new or work on my hokey pokey object, and I can say I want to sing verse 3 first, and then do and then do the refrain, and then I want to do verse 4 and the refrain. So I can actually reorganize it. So breaking things into functional units sometimes makes it easier to do more complicated tasks and in different orders. So let's go back to our learning exercise, see how we're doing. So we've defined our verses, we've written our 5 verses, and our full song method is set up like this so that we can work with this. And now you can zip up your project and work on it. I'm just going to show you quickly how you can access this from the Singer class also. So inside Singer class, we just have a main method here that we can work on. So here's the version with the main method in it, and also another method called sing one method. This just shows how we can call methods that we define in another class. So what we're doing here is we're declaring a hokey pokey object. It's a hokey pokey one method object, one of these. I'm going to change this to use our new class. So I'm going to say just declare a hokey pokey method, a hokey pokey object called song, and we're going to call it a constructor from that. Say new hokey pokey method. So this is how we instantiate or create an object of a certain type. It's very similar to right here where we go and we'd create that and we'd call this song and have it placed down here. That's what we're doing here, was creating an object called song. And then we're in song, we're calling full song. Very similar to how we go over here and we'd say song, full song, and it would display the whole song thing. So this main method is very similar to what we do manually here. So in Singer, I can just say, oops, I've got to compile this, and then I can just say run the main method, and it'll display the song for us over here. It'll create the song object and display the song. So this just shows you how you can call methods, create an object, and then call the methods in your song directly. Now here we could also do things like we could say song dot refrain, and we could call the different methods directly. So rather than doing full song, I could say song dot verse 1 and song dot refrain, and call in the parts of the song individually. If I compile this and run it now, let me clear up over here, and if I call main, it'll just display that first verse and that first song and the refrain, because that's all I'm calling directly. So when I break my code into functional units, then from outside my class, I can access those functional units in different ways. We'll see a little bit more about that in the next week. And yes, next week we'll be doing the hokey pokey again. So.